Thank you. Abraham, working with your ideas, I really feel very powerful in a lot of areas, and I especially can manifest things over several months, moves cross country, different things in my work. But what I want to do is expand that ability, especially in terms of my career. I've open to some wonderful things, and the area that I want to take further is disseminating that material. And I want to expand my consistency of taking inspired action or allowing inspired action. What I've noticed recently is that I will suddenly pop into this real creative spurt, and having given up a website a couple years ago, within a week, a whole new website is up and running, and I feel so alive and on track. And then I've got an ebook that's really in motion and complete and ready to do joint ventures. And then I get the message, I think, inside, because I want to be in the flow, you're pushing, back off, take the weekend off. So I do, and then Monday comes along, and there's, I think I'm getting another message, well, this isn't in the flow, don't do this. And so that goes on, and then couple weeks, couple months later, I feel stagnant, and what I want is clarity in discerning.
Well, it feels to us that what you're doing, and this is not uncommon, but what you're doing is, because you are clear about what you are wanting, and because you have been a part of an action-oriented world for a while, and you know that through your actions you can make a certain amount of things happen. And so most of you have come to rely on your physical actions for making things happen. And there isn't anything wrong with enjoying your action. Action is a delicious part of the physical experience. But we can tell by what we're feeling from you as you're speaking here that you have not quite got to the place where you are really sending the energy out ahead and letting it do the work, and you are then following the inspired action. You're still trying to motivate yourself, and that's hard to do. It's sort of like pushing the noodle. In other words, it's much better. Inspiration is finding the feeling place of something. Inspiration is finding the feeling place of something, creating a picture in your mind, finding the feeling place of it, practicing the feeling place of it until you are vibrationally in alignment with that. And then the universe orchestrating circumstances and events that just call you. In other words, you find yourself under those conditions not questioning whether you should or not. Your attitude is not, Abraham or somebody, what do you think about this? Your attitude is, I really don't care what anybody thinks about this. I'm going to do this. And when it feels like that, then you are working from the inside out. The inspiration is calling you forth. And that really is what you've intended about all of this. When you feel like you should do something in order to make something happen, now you're vibrating from the place of the lack of what you are wanting, and now you are trying to use your action to compensate for the lack of alignment. And there's just not enough action in the world to compensate for not being in that flow. So if we were standing in your physical shoes, we would let 90 or more % of our work be about lining up with the flow, and we would let 10 or less % of it be about worrying about what action that we would take. We tease our physical friends often. We say, it's sort of like you've come into the stream of life and you've got your canoe with you, and you come down to the banks of the river and you see the river and you point it upstream and you begin paddling. And then you say, oh, I'm really doing what I should, and I'm really paying the price, and I'm going to get there, I'm going to get there, I'm going to get there, I'm going to get there. And we say, turn and go with the flow. Just go with the flow. But the reason people are not quick to just jump in and go with the flow, there are several reasons. Sometimes you believe so much in struggle, you don't expect anything good to come if you don't pay some sort of a price. But the other big part of it is you have not consciously and deliberately aligned yourself with the flow, so you don't have any absolute correlations between having done that and having been paid off for having do that. That's why we are appreciating the questions that came before, because we want you to realize that if you take the time to specifically focus your desires so that you are consciously aware of the desires that you have specified, when they start coming into fruition, you make the association. You say, I remember that night that I sat on the porch and I dreamed about such and such and I felt this way. I remember the night that I talked with my friend over dinner and we felt as if it was already achieved. I remember the morning that I woke up and I realized that there were many things that I could do today, but the things that I really wanted to do and the things that I really chose to do, every single one of them felt really good to me as I did it. In other words, you begin to realize as you get into the stream that your work is not about justifying the good that comes to you through action or through paying any sort of a price. Your work is to align with the energy. And it is work. You watched some of them here today. In other words, it's not the easiest thing in the world to find a vibration that's unfamiliar and make it familiar, but that is the work. It's so much easier to find a vibration that is not familiar and work it into being familiar than it is to work against the current with action. That never gets you anywhere. In less time than it would take you to learn QuickBooks, you could line up your energy on anything. Far less time than learning computer program of any kind, you could learn how to move up this emotional scale. And then that's a computer program that would set you for life. In other words, once you've done it on one subject, now you've got the skills. Now you can do it on every subject. Sure, there are some subjects where you are closer to vibrational alignment, and that's what you meant when you began. You said, I have a wonderful life. There are so many parts of my life that are lining up just the way I want them to. I just have this bugaboo that's an important one that seems to keep getting in the way. And we say, just softly and slowly, but deliberately and diligently. And by diligently, we mean steadily. Make a decision that you want to feel better. So the emotional journey that we want you to take is not figuring out how to get more of what you are wanting, or figuring out how to market your ebook, or figuring out how to bring people to you. The emotional journey that we want you to take is, I want to go from the feeling of inadequacy. Now we're choosing that from your vibration. I want to go from the uncomfortable feeling of inadequacy to the satisfied feeling that I have something to share and there are people who want to hear it. Wouldn't you say that's the emotional journey? And once you make that journey, things will line right up for you, you see.
So I'd like to add another little piece to this, or
Yes.
ask about it. When you're talking about pre-paving, talking about visualizing and feeling that, and creating that alignment.
Now let us clarify something. The pre-paving happens even as you are sifting through contrast. In other words, you could be smack dab in the middle of something that is annoying or uncomfortable, and you could be launching rockets of desire, which are literally the pre-paving. When we talk about fantasizing or visualizing or scripting or writing positive aspects, all of those methods that we will talk more about later on if anyone is interested, all of those processes are not about the creation itself. They're about tools that get you in alignment with what you have already pre-paved. You can't stop pre-paving. You can't have, no one can, have an exposure to an experience without your personal preference erupting and being transmitted, whether you know it or not, vibrationally. You just can't be in this comparative experience without your personal preferences or full-blown desires pre-paving you. And so now all of the tools that we offer are to help you find vibrational alignment with what you have pre-paved. And don't you think, doesn't it make sense to you that when you're in the middle of something that you don't want, that what you do want launches forth with greater clarity? Don't you always know more clearly? Isn't that the time of the forming? That's the focusing that we were talking about. That's the focusing, and that's the pre-paving. And all of that sort of falls under the heading of science of deliberate creation. In other words, we don't want you to think in terms of, oh, I've got to set goals, I've got to think about what I want, I've got to write them down every day. Let your goals be launched forth from being in the trenches, so to speak. When you have an argument with someone, you're launching goals. When someone is unkind to you, you launch goals. When you're mean to somebody, you launch intentions. When things don't go the way you want them to, you launch intentions. All kinds of wonderful things begin to happen.